Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Shema podcast, and a topic, my friends, that I highly suspect that regardless of your background, whether you are just beginning to learn Torah or whether you grew up from and spent years in yeshiva, I suspect this topic will be new to you. And it is on the topic of kosher astrology. And you're probably thinking, as I once did, that there is no such thing as kosher astrology. But the author of the book, Kosher Astrology, Yitzchok Pinkesz, has totally debunked that entire idea. And I will tell you, too, if you sort of look at my journey, I'm a very systems guy, which is why I'm sure when I finally broke free from atheism and was wanting to delve into Torah, that the first book Hashem orchestrated going into my lap to learn was The Way of God by Ramchal, because he explains the system. And he does explain that the heavenly bodies are portals, are beings that drive energies into this world. And I've also shared with you, too, that the holidays that a lot of us experienced as like a Pesach holiday of let's get through this and get to the food has deep spiritual meaning and energies that are taking place that we can harness through our personal growth. And every time of the year is like that. I brought on and did an episode last month where I was discussing how I was really struggling. I set out with a goal of being more disciplined with my learning and having deeper concentration during davening. And as I begin to implement this with much vigor, I get to the month of Adar, and everything falls apart. I'm like taking 3 steps backwards in everything I'm doing until I stopped and had the recognition that that's not the avoda of Adar. It's just be joyful and let things flow through that joy. So we've discussed a lot about these energies through the year take place, but there's something that's always a contradiction that I learned. One is that I thought there was no such thing as a kosher astrology because we learned from Abraham in the Midrash that Hashem says he's above the stars. It doesn't apply to us. We have direct connection to Hashem. There's no intermediary angel. But there's also a Midrash that at conception, the angel takes that fertilized egg and brings it to Hashem and says, what is going to be of this one? And is he going to be tall or short or rich or poor or sick or healthy? And that's all determined. But Hashem says the only thing that's in its power is whether or not they fear the heavens, whether they fear Hashem. So what is it? Are we set by this set deterministic protocol of when we are born? Are we above the stars? We will get to the bottom of it, my friends. And what I think you will learn, what I know you will learn, is that this is a very powerful area of Torah, and one that if we want to grow as Jews, we must know it, understand it, and tap into it.
Welcome to the Shema podcast, the podcast for the perplexed, where Torah insights intertwined through personal stories as well as interviews with leading Torah scholars demonstrate the empowering qualities of Torah and mitzvot. Now to the show.
Yitzchok Pinkesz, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Dan, to be here. Really. Thank you.
So I haven't finished reading the book. I mean, you devote about a third of it just to debunking this idea very methodically, which a lot of my listeners who grew up in yeshiva will need to see that totally sourced out, that the idea that there is a non-kosher astrology and there is a kosher astrology. And then I want to sort of get into the mechanics of astrology. And so I've been reading that too, planning to go back and fill in the gaps. But let's just back up a little bit. And if you could tell your story, what brought you to delve into this subject?
So about 15, 16 years ago, so I'm a Gemini, and that's a curious energy, somebody who's curious, likes information, likes to understand things. and like almost an insatiable curiosity. So about 16 years ago, I was in a car with a couple of friends, and one of my friends had mentioned to me that he knew of a Torah observant astrologer, which sounded wild to me. And I didn't particularly believe in astrology. I didn't pay it any much attention. So on the lark, I said, hey, let's call this astrologer and ask her, some questions just to see, is there something to this? So we called her up, and so I gave her my information, and she started saying, oh, wow, you have a lot of the energy, the element of ear. And so she asked me, are you a rabbi, a professor, a Talmud Chacham, somebody who studies and writes? So I'm not a rabbi or professor, but I do love to study things. I do love to write and delve into so it kind of struck me as, okay, that's nice. And then she described my friend as a very strong element of earth, much more grounded, materialistic, down to earth. And he was a school principal. And so that kind of fit him too. So it wasn't an extensive thing, but just the basic, these two descriptions, had she switched them, they wouldn't have fit us at all. So I was kind of struck, okay, what is this air element? What is this that I sounded? So I became curious, and I started buying some books. Now, at the time, I didn't know that in my personal birth chart, I have Pluto, which intensifies everything, connected to Mercury, my communication and thinking. So instead of a few books, I bought 400 books on astrology. Yes. So I really delved into it, and I was just blown away. I started looking at my own chart, and this wasn't somebody telling me, some stranger who was scoping me out, figuring me out, telling me stuff. This was me looking at my own stuff and seeing it really was telling me so much information about who I am, my struggles, my gifts, my abilities, and I was like blown away. And I then tested everybody in my life, and it fit them also. And I was like, what's going on here? Now, I knew in Judaism, there are many discussions about astrology. We have the months are connected to astrology. We say Adar is connected to Pisces, is Mazel Adar Dagim, right? So I knew there was different stuff, but I wanted to look in deeper. What's Judaism? Because growing up was also like, yeah, it's not kosher, or stay away from it. It's best not to. There was this like no-go zone kind of like this,
right.
And I was like,
read, were they Jewish sources, or were there any Jewish sources out there on this topic?
So, right. So once I delved into it I delved in from a secular perspective, all the different books to understand how it works. And then I got into all the Jewish sources. Now I had enough information from a Jewish sources to know it's kosher, that I wasn't doing something wrong, right? To know, but to really practice it and get into it, right? That I needed more information. So I delved into every single sefer and Jewish source that I could find about astrology. And I was blown away by how much information is. What I don't understand is, how is everybody not aware of this? Because literally, like you mentioned, Ramchal has a whole chapter on astrology, and he says Hashem directs the world through astrology. And sefer after sefer, the Ramah, Rabbi Yitzchok Arama, Kedes Yitz, all these Jewish big Sfarim, the Ramban, the Ran, all of them.
It's in our siddur. After I read the book, it's like it's all over the place in our Shacharis service.
Yes, you have it all over. And not only that, if you look now, especially Pesach is coming up, right? So if you look in the Machzor, you'll see the back of the Machzor, they have the 12 zodiac signs. You'll see it. It's in the Machzor. So it's throughout the Talmud. It's throughout every place. And I was like just blown away by how across the board, everybody believed in astrology, and everybody agreed this is the way that Hashem directs the world, is through astrology. So I was like, wow. I'm like, I have to let everybody know about this. I have to write a book.
If you could share with the audience, one of the things you bring up in the book is that Abraham was an astrologer. You can share that. I think that will wake everyone up to this reality.
Yes, it's a direct Gemara. So there's a famous, in the Torah, it says, Hashem Bayrachas Avraham Bakol, that Hashem blessed Avraham with everything. So the Gemara asks, what is everything? So the Gemara explains that it was the gift of that the astrology was in the heart of Avraham, that all the kings from the east and west would come to his door to ask him astrological advice. This is a direct Gemara that says that Abraham Avinu, the father of our nation, was a professional astrologer. And then, if you look at that Kedes Yitzchok, Rabbi Yitzchok Arama, he lived in the 1400s, and he writes that the way that Avraham brought the world to knowledge of Hashem is by teaching them astrology. He showed them these planets, they're not random, they're not false gods. There is one God who is controlling all the planets, and that's how he taught the world about Hashem, is through astrology, which is wild. And then there's another Gemara where Abraham Avinu, he had a conversation with God. He said, God, I looked in my astrological chart. This is Abraham Avinu talking to God. I looked in my chart and I saw that I'm not going to have children. So God said, whoa, let's step outside of that perception of astrology, of a fatalistic version. You think because you see, this is what the Gemara says, that Jupiter is in the east, so you're not going to have children. I'm going to move Jupiter from the east to the west and you'll have children. So God didn't say, no, astrology is nonsense. God says that nothing is set in stone. Don't think you can see in a chart a fatalistic end result. There are always possibilities, and that's where God comes into the picture. Your relationship with God is crucial to this picture. But Avraham Avinu was a professional astrologer, yes.
So that's what reconciles the two midrash that seems to conflict with one another. The one you just referenced and the one of the angel bringing the fertilized egg to Hashem and asking what its destiny.
Yes, so we each have a birth chart. The moment we're born, God takes the energy of the universe and puts it into you as a baby. Now, this energy, you then are meant to harness it throughout your life and bring it out to the world. So that's very powerful, that this moment in time is never lost. It's implanted within you, and then you're here to harness. Now, so you have a particular mission and purpose of what you're here to do. So that's not a choice. What is a choice is, are you going to do the work to heal, to work through your issues, to hone your skill sets, to bring it out, to follow the right path? Every energy has a right path and a wrong path that you can go down. I'll give you an example, the energy of Neptune. Neptune is about elevation and transcendence and a oneness. It's spirituality, creativity. So that's the healthy form of it. But it's a yearning for something higher. And sometimes people, unfortunately, if they don't have spirituality, if they don't have elevation or creativity in some way, they turn to alcohol and drugs, which also gives you that effect. Because if you're drunk, you're high, you're feeling also like no pain, no nothing. But that's a very difficult and struggle. You're going to go down a really wrong path if you go through that. So that's where you have free will within it. But everything has branches. Everything is meant to help you grow. But the thing is, you do have a unique purpose and gift. And when you're doing that, you're going to feel like $1 million. You're going to feel like you're really like shooting on all cylinders. Your life is going to really be flowing. And if it's not, it means you haven't yet achieved that. You haven't yet fulfilled your purpose and what you're here to do.
Yes, I have heard early on in my learning that some people may be born with the proclivity to spill blood, but then your free will steps in and you can say how you channel that. You can be a murderer or a thief, or you can be a moil or a kosher butcher. I mean, so that's an example of we can learn about our inherent, I guess, talents that are infused into these energies when we're born and know how to harness them.
Absolutely. And there's a fascinating Gemara with the Gemara in Shabbos talks about that, about if you're born under Mars, Madim, right? That's like a bloodthirsty energy. What's really interesting, Rabbah says, wait, I was born under Mars and I don't have this bloodthirsty energy. So they told him, no, so you channel it in a refined way. You're a judge who has to do punishment and sometimes give the death sentence. So you do have that energy, but you do it in a refined way. Then there's actually another Gemara in Megillah, which talks about how Rabbah, we say Purim, that there's a mitzvah to Adula Yada. You're supposed to get drunk until you don't know the difference between Haman and Mordechai, right? And so Rabbah had a Purim Suda with Reb Zera, and it says that Rabbah got drunk, v'shachteya Reb Zera, and that he shechted, he butchered Reb Zera, he harmed him. And the Gemara explains that he harmed him, and then he prayed for his well-being, and he got better. And then he invited Reb Zera to come back again next year. Reb Zera said, no, thanks. Not every year you're guaranteed to have a miracle. So we see that Rabbah, who had this energy, so mostly when he was in control, he did it in a refined way as a judge. He brought out this judgment, this tough energy. But in a moment of intoxication, the negative side came out. So we have to be very aware of our energies and make sure to bring it out in a positive way.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was looking at wives, as when you look at someone else, you can be more objective, the accuracy of it. And her, when I was looking at hers, the commentary I was getting on it was that she is someone that'd be very dominant around music. It was going to be an extremely dominant trait. And to know my wife's background, masters in music, she was an opera singer, before we became from Jews, and that wasn't the right outlet, but now she still has her outlet by helping the young women at the high school here where they have the recitals. But when I saw that, I was like, wow, like that's not something that can be accidental by any means. And you do see it in yourself as well. So explain first. So there's several things going on here. One is the moment you come into this world, you, based off the positioning of the planets, it is sort of setting these different strengths and challenges you're going to have. Let's first start, if you can just elaborate a little more on that, because we tend to think it's just like, okay, I was born on June 29th, so I'm a Cancer, that's all there is to it. But you open my eyes that there's a lot of other dynamics that can create countless combinations, which of course explains the countless personalities we have in this world.
Absolutely. Right. So the majority of people believe, because again, they haven't looked into it that much, that astrology is basically you're a zodiac sign. You're a Gemini, you're a Leo, and that's pretty much the sum total of astrology. And that's not even the beginning. Astrology has multiple layers. Level 1 is a zodiac sign, but have a news flash for everybody. You don't have one zodiac sign, you have multiple zodiac signs. So for example, your sun represents your core self, your identity. So that can be in one sign. Your moon, because when you're born, a birth chart, it catches all the planets, the moon, Mercury, Venus, these are all part of you. And the moon represents your emotions. So your emotions might be in a different zodiac sign. So let's say if your sun is in Aries, so that's a charge ahead, warrior, fiery type of energy. Your moon might be in Cancer, so your emotions might be very sensitive and very different from that fiery Aries. Your Mercury might be in a different sign. Mercury is communication and thinking. So each part of you, now sometimes you might have the same sign of all of them, and then you're very strongly going to be that energy. But that's why a lot of times people don't feel like they're their sign, because their moon sign is a whole different sign and it represents a different energy. So even that is still the first layer of having multiple zodiac signs. Then there are planets, like I gave example of the moon is your emotions. If you have a planet like Uranus connecting to your moon, Uranus is about being authentic and being true to who you are. So that means you're somebody, you're not going to be, you're not going to like when people tell you what to do. You're going to have to do things your own way. There's more of a rebellious energy connected to you. So your emotions is not just a regular emotion, let's say a regular Cancer moon. It's also a Cancer moon connected to Uranus. So there's a whole nother element that's informing the energies. Now, it's there ultimately to be a gift in order to you to be really your true, authentic self and be able to speak your truth, even if the world speaks against you. But growing up, it might have been hard in school when you have that energy and you're supposed to follow the rules and everything. That's a struggle. So something that's a struggle growing up initially is meant to be your greatest strength ultimately, and your unique personality, who you're meant to be. So understanding these energies can be so helpful, both as a child, if you're a parent, to understand your children, and also for yourself to understand your past, and also going forward, what your purpose is. There's so much information. That's the biggest thing. There's so much data about who you are, what your gifts are, and it's complex. Human beings are not simple people. We're not just one energy. We're multi-layered energy. So we really have to understand all of those layers.
A lot of parents that being a parent's hard. There's not like a manual that comes out with it, but there is to some degree, because if you can know your child's birth chart, and you quote a sage, I forget the name of the sage.
The Vilna Gaon, yes.
Okay, there you go. And what did he say?
So the Vilna Gaon, who lived in the 1700s, and he's world famous, very renowned, the last 250 years, one of the greatest Jewish leaders. And he says, so there's a pasuk in Mishlei, which says, Chanach lenar al pi darkai, raise your child according to his way. So the Vilna Gaon specifies, raise him according to his birth chart, because this is who he's meant to be. If you try to force him to be something he's not going to do well. You're going to do damage to him. So really recognize who he is and raise him in the right path within those energies. That's what the Vilna Gaon says, which is such a powerful statement.
Not every child is going 12-hour-a-day yeshiva, possibly. I know that seems heretical living in a community now, but it's...
No, I'm telling you, sometimes I see charts of children and my heart goes out to them. Like, this child was not designed to sit in a class for 8-10 hours. They have a fiery energy. They have Jupiter. God created them with these extra energies. Allow them an outlet for it. They're not designed to do it. The things that they're here to do in their life is going to require incredible energy. Allow them, don't torture them. Like, it just hurts me sometimes when I see that in the chart.
I started teaching this year a macroeconomics class for the seniors at the yeshiva here, and they're all brilliant kids, students, but like one of them loves art, was like an incredible artist. And I could tell the topic of macroeconomics was absolutely painful. It still is like, but I mean, it's just, he has his own path and his own things and talents he will flourish. And I told him, I was like, I look at your artwork. So don't tell me you're dumb, because you're not dumb, because I could not do what you do at all. You just have a different talent that is needed in the world. There's enough business people in the Jewish community and people that understand economics. We need more artists like you, but that's an example of someone that
100%. Our creative aspects is crucial, because anything that we're meant to do, the things in this world, we have to also tap into our creative abilities. And it's something that's not valued. And, creative abilities is literally coming from Hashem. God is the one who inspires us. God is the one who sends us ideas. So by shutting off that avenue, you're closing off an avenue to God and what you're meant to do. So people who have artistic talents absolutely should hone it. You have no idea in what multiple different ways they can bring it out to the world, and it can really inspire people. You can really have a huge impact in this world. So it's really important. I always talk about that. It's really important. All aspects of ourselves, from our instinctual side, our emotional side, our logical and linear side, and also our intuitive and creative side, all of it has to be brought out. All of it has to be elevated in order for us to be running on all cylinders and really fulfill our purpose. You can't shut down a part of yourself or minimize a part of yourself. And I see that a lot with people. And our work here to do is to heal that. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes it's struggle. Sometimes in the chart itself, we have two parts of ourselves conflicting, so we suppress one side. And our goal, our work, is to really heal and make sure we're doing all sides of ourselves.
The other thing I find that can be really beneficial reminds me of the bracha that Yaakov gave to the first two sons. He was giving out brachas that sound like they don't sound like brachas at all, And but the commentary says like they're amazing brachas because he showed him exactly what your challenge is and therefore what your mission is to fix in doing this. And so by understanding where our challenges are, it sort of allows us to focus on that. I've always heard too, wherever we have the most challenges in life, that's where our greatest potential for greatness resides.
Absolutely. And people don't realize how directly connected it is. Like literally, I can go through a birth chart and show you that the area of challenge, that's literally, it can be painful. It can be difficult. It's a process, especially when we're younger. We don't know how to handle these energies. So it's a learning curve. But through that process, literally, it's giving you the gifts, the abilities, the superpowers of what you're going to need later to bring out to the world. I compare it to an Olympic athlete. Olympic athlete has to train for 10 hours a day. It has to be super careful what it eats. It does not, he or she does not have an easy time getting to where it needs to go. But after doing the training and doing the work, Olympic athlete can do things that very few people in the entire world can do. It's the same thing for all of us. All of our struggles and difficulty is part of your gift directly. Those things are directly part of your gift that you're here to hone and master and heal. And then you're going to bring it out in the world in phenomenal ways.
One of the things we discuss a lot in this podcast is that we all have this spiritual version of ourselves, stuck in this physical body, and our task is to bring out that version of ourselves. The rest of the world is benefited when we accomplish that. And we've talked a lot about the way to get there is through reading Torah, doing mitzvos, all those things elevate us, help us cleave to our Creator so we can do so. But this is just an entire other avenue, a complementary avenue that really allows us to excel in this area. And even to the type of Torah, I would assume that maybe we should be focusing on more. I always look at Torah learning as like this massive cholent, and it's like we need a bit of everything, halakha, Gemara, Parsha. But I've always been very drawn to more big abstract like ideas like Ramchal, Hasidus, Kabbalah, Rabbi Nachman. It's like, to me, like that's where I get naturally drawn to. And I think if you could elaborate a little more on that, if we understand that, we sort of know like the type of Torah we're going to connect to more and how to bring that out into the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're multifaceted as human beings. And like, it's interesting, these four planets that I talk about, we have Mars, our instinct, Moon is our emotions, and then we have the two sides of the brain, the left brain and right brain. So Mercury is the left brain, the logical and linear. So think halacha, Gemara, it's very logical and linear. And then we have the right brain, which is intuitive and creative. So think of more mystical, that's more Kabbalah, Ramchal, bigger ideas, conceptual ideas, philosophical ideas, not so much the logical and linear. There's something higher and greater. Now, they're meant to all work together. So our instinctual side, it's kind of what you're talking about before, we're here to guide that. So the instinctual side is a survival mechanism. It's literally like an animal is designed to survive. Now, the question is that going to be driving the car? Or we have our neshama, our spirituality informs our instincts, and that we're in control of it rather than it being in control of us. So that's our Mars. That's the first level. Then our Moon, our emotions, our desires, our feelings, our wants. Also, the same thing. What's driving it? Is it something, a baby also has feelings. It just knows, feed me, hold me, take care of me. It's all my needs. Now, it's really important. Our needs should be fulfilled. But what's driving it? So if we have spirituality driving it, so we can fulfill our needs and come from an elevated place, not from we're here to train our animalistic physical self into a higher self. And then we have the brain is Mercury. So the logical linear, that teaches us, okay, what can I do? What's going to help me? Like Shabbos, I want to keep Shabbos, which is deeply spiritual and deeply right brain, intuitive and creative side. But in order to create that formula, I also need my left brain. I need to know the halachas of Shabbos in order how to build this container. How do I build this space where I can connect with God and elevate myself and be in oneness? I need the practical. So we need this combination of all of them. So when people stress too much one side, just halacha and not machshava and elevation of philosophy, that's a big mistake too. Don't get lost in it. It's important. We need all of those. And then look, there's going to be we may be favored one certain sides based on our chart, based on how God created us. We may favor and enjoy certain parts more. So there's nothing wrong with having more of an emphasis in that area. And nobody can tell you that it's supposed to be in one area versus the other area. God is the one who designed you, and he's the one who's telling you when you're following what you feel naturally. If you say you feel much more connected to Ramchal, go with it. That's God telling you that's who your neshama is, what you're here to do. But we also have to have all of the other stuff also. But our emphasis is on our particular nature, who Hashem created us to be.
It's just giving us the resource. Gave each of us when we came into this world and how to harness the right. Now, of course, we have our birth chart, but it also overlays with what's happening during the year. So you mentioned Abraham being an astrologer. I put together last month my audience and sent it to the WhatsApp community because I didn't want to run into a month again and be unprepared. And I was recognizing when I work out every day, I have a routine. I know which muscle group I'm going to work on. So I put together a monthly spiritual workout routine. Like, here's what the avoda is, here's what to focus on based off the energies of the month. And the source of that was Sefer Yetzirah, which was the Torah that Avraham was learning from the yeshiva of Shimon Ever. So that all sort of syncs up and makes sense. But I assume that each of us, based off our birth chart, are creating different dynamics during each month of the year as we perceive those. How does that sort of complement or play off each other?
Right. So the way God created, one of the ways, there's vast ways of how God created the world. One of the ways is just a lot of energies happening all the time. And that's, the energy of the day, the hour, the week, the month, the season, the year. There's micro level energies, macro level energies. So there's always stuff that's affecting us astrologically and then in general. And so we're meant to go through all these energies and experience all these different types of situations and feelings. And like now we start Nisan. Nisan is Aries, so there's more an energetic energy. And of course, everybody's cleaning for Pesach and everybody's running and doing. And that's the energy of Aries. That's a fiery, let's go type of, energy that's connected. So we do have that with every month. Then we also have what's called transits, which means the planets in the sky right now are connecting with your birth chart. So you can be going through particular energies that are very powerful. Sometimes it's once in 20-year energies. Sometimes it's once in a lifetime. And that's a time for you really to grow focused on that energy. So for example, if you have the energy of Uranus, the planet Uranus, which is once in 22 years, that hits like a core planet of your sun, that's a time when you're meant to speak your truth. So let's say normally you have different ideas, but you're worried, what's my rabbi going to say? What are the spouses going to say? Political correctness. You don't want to, am I going to get fired from my job? Uranus comes into our lives during that, so like 9 months to a year and a half. And during that time, it gives us a courage. It becomes so important for us to be authentic and true to who Hashem created us to be that we're not afraid to speak our truth anymore. So we do speak up, and we might get some pushback and people around us like, what happened to you? I don't recognize you, because it's a time of individuation. It's a time to speak your truth. And in the Torah, we have that. In Parshas Lech Lecha, Hashem said, Lech Lecha ma'aretzcha moladecha. He told Avram, leave your land, leave your homeland, your parents' home, and I will turn you into a great nation. It's an individuation process. So he left everything he knew. The whole world believed in idol worship. And he said, no, that's nonsense. There's only one true God. And he spoke his truth. That's your Uranian energy. So everybody has that at different points in their life where they're meant to bring out their truth of who they are. And that's just one energy. There can be Pluto, which is about transformation, or Neptune, a time of elevation in your life, or Jupiter, which is enthusiasm. There's all these different energies that hits you at different times in your life. That's part of your growth process. And all of it is laid out and planned by God for you. So it's just wild once we grasp and understand what's happening there.
Yeah, and I was amazed to see that you go into the fact that it's not on a year-by-year basis, but there are things happening in broader cycles that influence major life changes, times for growth. Please speak to that a little bit as well.
So yes, this is so fascinating, and I feel like everybody should know this. So in Judaism, we have this concept of Rosh Chodesh, of a new month. In fact, today is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's the beginning of the new month, right? So what happens? So the sun meets the moon in the heavens, right? That's called a new moon. 7.5 days later, we have a first quarter moon. 7.5 days later, after that, we have a full moon, and the full moon plays a huge part in Judaism. Purim is on a full moon. Pesach is on a full moon. Sukkot is on a full moon. These timings are very, very important in Judaism. 7.5 days later, after the full moon, we have a last quarter moon, and then 7.5 days later after that, we start this cycle all over again. It's a new month, right? And a month is about a time of renewal, new opportunities, new chances. That's what a new month is, right? So in astrology, we also have Rosh Chodesh, but instead of a 30-day cycle, it's a 30-year cycle. And it's very personalized for each person, which means you'll have a new moon, and that's the beginning of a whole new portion of your life for the next 30 years. Something is ending from your past, and you're beginning a new cycle for the next 30 years of your life. It's like a changing of the seasons of your life and new possibilities, like things that you thought you couldn't do, now you can do. It opens up. Life opens up. 7.5 years later, there's another changing of the seasons of your life. You're ready for your next level of growth. So something might be ending from these 7.5 years, and you're adding a new piece to the puzzle. And then at the full moon, you have self-revelation of who you are, what you're meant to do. Each part adds another level of maturity to your growth, to who you are. So I'll give you an example in my life. About 15, 16 years ago, it was at my first quarter moon when I first discovered astrology. Now, at the time, I didn't know, I was fascinated by it, but I had no idea what a huge impact it would be making in my life. So sometimes we learn things and it happens, you didn't think, okay, it's not a big deal. It is. It may be a very big deal. 7.5 years later, at my full moon, I had an encounter with an artist who told me that I also can be an artist. Now, I think of myself as a psychologist, a philosopher, Jewish studies, all these things. I know who I am, but I'm not an artist. I can't paint. I don't have good hand-to-eye coordination in that. But this person, just like I was meant to meet somebody just to open my mind about something that I was closed off to being. And then I did have different ideas that I wanted to bring out, but I didn't have the means to do it. So Hashem sent me this tool, Adobe Illustrator, that I'm able to create illustrations. And I really loved it. And in my book today, I have 75 pages of illustrations that I created because I learned very late in life, in my 40s, I learned that I can create illustrations. So that was another piece of the puzzle. So at the first quarter moon, I learned about astrology. At my full moon, 7.5 years later, I learned illustrations. And then there's something called disseminating moon, like 2.5 years later, where you're here to share the information and knowledge that you've learned with the world. You create your own unique formula that everything you've learned since your new moon, so that's like 15, 20 years, you're here to create a unique formula and share it with the world. That's when I started writing my book at my disseminating moon. And then at my last quarter moon is literally when my book was published and it came out. So right now I'm about a year or so after my last quarter moon. And that's when the tree bears the fruits of this whole cycle that started for me in 2000. Now it's the tree is bearing fruit. So everything I learned, I was able then to put together and bring the world the book Kosher Astrology. So that's part. And every person has this unique timing and system, big picture purpose of what you're here to do and grow. And it's fascinating and mind-blowing to actually see it in your life because you recognize it. I go through people with their dates and they go, oh my God, that's when I did this. And this major event happened. Like literally you can see that it's all planned out. It's all part of Hashem's incredible plan. That's the other thing that blows my mind every time. You see your life is deeply connected. Hashem has a plan for you and it's deeply connected of when there's a timing of exactly when everything develops. So really amazing.
Will compliment on your ability to develop and harness artistic abilities because my daughter, when she saw that I ordered the book, she immediately texted me and said, I want to read that when you're done. But when it arrived, I grabbed it out of the package and was just going to bring it over here to my office. And she said, hold on a second, stop. You're not appreciating this. Because she's very critical of a lot of Jewish book covers. She's like, well, I don't know what they were thinking with that. But with yours, she's like, no, this is beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, she told me, she's like, no, just touch the top of it, Dad. She's like very tactile. And she's like, it's beautiful. And then she opened the pages up. It's like, look at the beauty of the artwork. Like you just appreciate the aesthetics, Dad, before you run off and start reading it. Cause you really did an amazing job. It's definitely a book that you can, when you're done learning it, leave out on your coffee table for a guest to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, that was one of my big intentions that I wanted to create something with. Number one is the content, incredible content. So there's 500 pages that really goes through the whole first section about what makes astrology kosher, what makes it not kosher, what are the different parts and pieces. The second part really gets into astrology. What is astrology? How can it help you? What's the depth of it? And I give all kinds of examples. I bring examples of presidents. I give examples in times of history and all different kinds of things. And the last part, I show how deeply intertwined it is within the Torah. So the number one thing I wanted was content. So the content should be depth, like new things. I love when I read a book, you're like, wow, I didn't know this. I wanted to bring that kind of energy. Then the next thing that was really important to me is like, why shouldn't it also be a beautiful book? Like why not have content and beauty? I feel like Apple Computer did that really well. That's what made them, it was a functional thing, but they wanted to make it nice and that people should enjoy looking at it if you're going to do it. So my publisher's Mosaica Press. They did a phenomenal job on the cover, just beautiful the way they laid things out. And then I put together 75 pages of illustrations. So it's a full color book. Every chapter has an illustration at the end of the chapter that really summarizes the whole chapter. And it's also meant because some of these ideas are complex. And I think a lot of people are visual learners. So it's much more helpful to see it visually. And I wanted it to be colorful with that. So I'm very grateful to Hashem that it really turned out beautiful, that people love not just the content, the beauty. People talk a lot about that, how much they enjoy that it is a coffee table book also.
The other thing this is so beneficial for is relationships. Like my daughter was born, I was born June 29th. My daughter was born June 13th, and my wife was July 11th. And one thing that was very clear that we sort of know about all of us is that we're very introverted. Like the socialization, we when we go do stuff, like, okay, now I'm exhausted. I want to go back and be by myself. And we know we have to give each other some space too in our lives. And so as the little I've learned, I can see the depth of understanding how I can improve my relationship as a husband, as a father, by understanding them and understanding myself and how to develop those relationships to a much greater level. What can you?
Yes. So that is huge. It's a huge part of astrology. There are three types of charts that I talk about in astrology. First is your birth chart. So that's your own chart with your personality, your purpose, what you're here to do, your tafkid, your struggles, your gifts. So that's the core one. Then there's what I call the transit charts, the different times in your life when different energies are affecting you. The third one is called what I call the couples chart. And that's when you can take two charts and overlay them one over another, and you can see how one person is affected by the other person. And it's so powerful. All the really important people in your life are gonna have some very strong connections. And you can see what areas where there's flowing energy, why you feel a certain way around them. You can also see where the challenging energies are. And by understanding what those challenging energies, what's clashing there, you can really help you to have shalom bayis, to have peace at home, to work through things, to understand somebody else. You can also have compassion. Why are people so different than I am? Why is my child or my spouse? Because they have certain energies that drive them that you don't have. And if you have compassion about that, you'll understand it better and understand it's not personal. So there's so much information. I do this like anybody who has a big impact in my life, I look at that. So, for example, my book has haskama and approbation from Rab David Cohen, like the big posik, and he's in his 90s, right? So he's decades older than me. So in your chart, you also have something called a north node, which shows your purpose in this world. And in his charts, I took his, after he gave me the approbation, I looked at his chart and my chart. His Saturn, which represents authority, is directly connected to my north node, to my purpose in this world. So I didn't have any other interaction with him. And here's somebody in his 90s, born decades later, and God planned it out that his authority should connect with my purpose in this world. I mean, how perfect is that? Yeah.
Let me ask you another question too. We had an exchange over email. I've had time to think about the question, but when you're doing this, you're sort of looking at your birth date in the Gregorian calendar, which I guess it really doesn't matter because we also have our Jewish birth dates calendar, but I guess it really doesn't matter because it's still just measuring a pinpoint in time in the planetary and celestial body positioning. So that doesn't matter. But I asked you, I was like, does it make a difference since my wife and daughter are converts? But I guess while their spiritual DNA changed, they're still in the physical body that they received back when they came into this world. But is there any influence there when someone goes through conversion, because there is a big spiritual change taking place with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's wild. So I would say there's a birth chart, and that's always going to be important. That's part of who you are, who God created you the moment you were born. So that's going to be a huge part of your energy. There's also a chart of a time of conversion. Whenever you make a big change in your life, that's going to inform you, give you more information about it. But in particular, I've actually studied this quite a bit. And it's fascinating to see that usually when people convert and make that kind of big changes in their life, they usually have a Pluto transit, either once in a lifetime or once in 60 years. And Pluto is about death and rebirth. It's transformation. It's going from caterpillar into butterfly. And when you're converting, it's the death of the old life and the rebirth of a new life, like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So it's a very Plutonian experience. So that also shows that it's all part of God's alignment that they're going through at that time. Or they can have a Neptune energy. And Neptune is all about elevation and connectedness and oneness. That's when you're really inspired. It can be an incredible spiritual experience. So either Pluto or Neptune is usually is the energy that's happening at the time of a person's conversion. It's so powerful and amazing to see. It's all part of God's plan.
Wow.
So yes,
because their conversions were not at the same time. My wife's like a year and a half earlier, and it was obviously by design because it wasn't
her time, right? It wasn't the child's time. So each one, because it's the energy that's happening to each person at that time that when they're meant to go through this process. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating.
I'm looking forward to learning more about this. I'm curious to know what the last 4.5, 5 years look like from this type of system of measurement, because I've gone from moving into a frum community, getting laid off, starting a business, like just nonstop change, doing this podcast. And it's just like, it's been very chaotic, but I suspect that if I were to look at things back then, I would have at least known, like, You're about to go through some big change. Hold on. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a little scary at times, but hold on. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I find it so helpful. Like literally, if I would have spoken to you 5 years ago, I could have laid out the energies that are coming up. I couldn't tell you specifically what's going to happen, but I can talk about there's some major changes, major new energy that's coming into your life, and that sometimes that can include some turmoil in that process. But it's meaningful and purposeful. It's leading you someplace. When you look at the bird's eye view of, in 10 years from now, when you look back at the bird's eye view that everything that took place for you, you're going to see a very clear purpose why you had to go through each of these things. Every piece was adding a layer into who you're meant to be, into your personal growth. It's so powerful. So it just helps us rather than, look, our biggest job is to have faith and belief in God. So it's if we can just be with that, that's great. But sometimes it's not like we feel like we need to know a little bit more. We feel a little bit lost. This can give us an extra layer of connecting with that belief and faith in God, is seeing that this is part of the plan. It's encouraging. And to me, that's what, Hashem, it says in Medrash Rabbah that every blade of grass has an astrological energy urging it to grow. That means God designed these energies to help us grow. It's here to comfort us, to know that we're in part of the plan. I got fired from my job. That's part of the plan because something much greater is ready for you. So even though right now it's hard, it's a hardship, how am I going to handle? But understand it's purposeful, it's meaningful, it's going to lead you to something so much greater.
how's been the reception? I'm curious to know, like in the more traditional from I think this topic has a understanding up into.
Yes. So me too. I was also like, oh, how are people going to react? How are people, and the thing is, I feel so blessed by Hashem. Like literally at first, when people first hear that I put out a book, they're like, oh, but it's not kosher. It's not a. And then when they read the book, they're completely on the other side. They're like, oh, wow, now I really understand it. Because it's not me saying it. I'm bringing all the direct sources. In the appendix, I have 70 direct sources from our greatest leaders. And I bring down very clearly all the Gemaras, the Medrash, very clear. It's very clear. To me, it's not, it's like not even a question. If you anybody who delves into it a little bit will see very quickly, very clearly, there's kosher version and not kosher version. And the kosher version is highly praised and it's highly, so yes, even in the most yeshivish communities, the most Haredi communities, I haven't gotten any pushback at all. Because I'll say, who you are, you're not arguing with me, you're arguing with the Ran, you're arguing with the Ramah, you're arguing with the Akedah Yitzchok. I'm not saying it, they're the ones who are saying it. So right. How are you going to argue with that? The Gemara in Shabbos says it's a mitzvah lachshav t'kifs mazalos. It's a mitzvah to learn about astrology. Rashi is there specific, says it's talking about astrology. And the Ran explains why. Because through astrology, you see the greatness of Hashem. So like literally they're saying it's a mitzvah. Who's going to argue? Who's going to argue with the Ran? Who's going to argue with Rashi,
Amazing. I'm so appreciative you sort of pioneered, not really, basically exploring and helping us reveal the fact that this is our heritage as a Jewish people. Part of our Torah sort of got lost, but you're bringing it back and it can be very beneficial to people. And so I will include a link in the show notes so they can purchase this book. Now, I have not completed the reading. Will it equip me by the time I've completed studying to not only to be able to learn how to do, or are there other steps after reading the book to allow us to know how to actually read our birth chart, to read how different things will happen in our life? Is that a further level of study post reading the book?
So yeah, so like any great wisdom, you don't get a PhD from reading a book, like it requires learning, it requires studying. I spent 15 years. It doesn't take 15 years, but it does take so I think my book is a great starting point to understand the mechanics. It'll teach you what each planet stands for, what each zodiac stands for, what it can show you. So I think it's a great starting point. Then you have to draw up a chart and you have to learn more about the pieces of how it works all together. It's a learning curve. It's like anything else, it's something I'm hoping to create courses to teach astrology because I've gotten a lot of requests. People want to learn it. And I want everybody to be able to be their own astrologer. It's something that everybody can learn how to do, but it's like anything else. It's like learning a language. If I read a book and I learn a language, you have to practice, you have to study. It takes, some work on it, but definitely the book is a huge beginning, a huge starting point for it. And I wanted to mention, so my book is available on Amazon USA. So I know you have an international audience. So the thing is, it's not available in your local Amazon, but if you go to Amazon USA, they have many specials. They have free shipping to Israel. They do free shipping to a few countries, or at a very reduced price of maybe $6 to $10, depending on which country you're in. So I would say go to Amazon USA, and search for Kosher Astrology, Yitzchok Pinkesz, in order to find the book. I also have a website, kosherastro.com, and I also do chart readings, and I have a few other things there as well.
Okay, so I'll put the link to that to order the book and your website, and if they want to reach out to you, that will provide a means to do so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, after I'm done really studying this book, taking it to the next level. And I know where to go to when I want to take this, because it's something that I don't want to be theoretical. I want to be able to use practical knowledge to help me, help my family, and everyone else in their journey of their mission in this world, to bring out that perfect spiritual version of them for the rest of humanity. So thank you so much. Great topic, great book.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate it. It was an honor to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the episode and found it meaningful, please take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast. To share feedback, suggest future topics, or ask questions for the host or his guests, you can email him at shemapodcastshow@gmail.com. That is shemapodcastshow@gmail.com, or click the show notes to join the growing WhatsApp community.